Hey guys, welcome to lesson 11. The objective today is to multiply a decimal fraction by a single digit whole number. We're going to be doing this on page 53 and 54 in your textbook. Right now, turn to page 53 and 54. Okay, we're going to solve by drawing discs on a place value chart. Pretty simple. We're going to start with our chart. Here's our decimal. So we've got our tenths column, our hundredths, and our thousandths. We're going to use dots. 3 copies of 2 tenths. 1 copy, 2 copies, 3 copies. And I already made a mistake. I put them in the hundredths. So we need to move those copies over to the tenths. If I have 3 copies of 2 tenths, that's the same as saying 3 times 2 tenths, which equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 tenths. Okay, letter B, 5 groups of 2 hundredths. Here's our decimal point. We've got our tenths column. We've got our hundredths. We need 5 groups of 2 hundredths. Here's 1 group. Here's 2 groups. 3 groups. 4 groups. 5 groups. If we wrote that as an equation, that would be 5 times 2 hundredths, which equals, count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If we wrote 10 hundredths, you can take 10 and move them over 1. 10 in the hundredths makes 1 in the tenths, so we would end up with an answer of decimal point 1, which is 1/10, or if you think of it as 10 hundredths, decimal point 10. Both are the same answer. Okay, number 3 is 3 times 6 tenths. So we need to look at our tenths column. Here's our decimal point. Here's our tenths. 3 times 6 tenths means we need 3 copies of 6 tenths. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 1 copy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 2 copies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 3 copies. Remember, we can do groups of 10 and they move 1 place to the left. So if we circle 10 of them, that makes 1 disc over in the ones place. And then we've got left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we can't move any more. So if we did 3 times 6 tenths, that's going to equal 1 whole and 8 tenths. Next one we have is 6 times 4 hundredths. So we got our decimal point, we have our tenths, we have our hundredths place. 6 times 4 hundredths means we need 6 copies of 4 hundredths. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 copy, 2 copies, 3 copies, 4 copies, 5 copies, 6 copies. Remember, we can put them into groups of 10 now and move them 1 place to the left. So 4, 8, there's a group of 10, and we can make a tenth. Another group of 10 makes us another tenth, and we're left with 4 left over. So if we have 6 times 4 hundredths, That's going to equal decimal point. We have 2 discs in the tenths place, and we're left with 4 discs in the hundredths place. Okay, we have 5 times as much as 7 tenths. So we need to start with our tenths place. 5 times as much as 7 tenths means we need 5 copies of 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Since we have so many in the tenths, I know we're going to have a ones. We're going to group them, 7 and 3 from here. Gives us 1 amount of 10. Make our disk a little bigger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Gives us another disk. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Gives us another big. And we're left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we have 5 times 7 tenths, we have 3 chips in the ones place, and we're left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chips in the tenths place. Next one, we've got 4 thousandths times 3. So we need to go to the thousandths place. We've got our tenths, we've got our hundredth, and we've got our thousandth. And we have 4 thousandths times 3. So that means 4 thousandths, and we need 3 copies. There's 1, 2, 3 copies. Group them into tens. 4, 8, 10. Here's one group. We move it over, make a chip that's just a little bit bigger. Can't move anything else, so we have 4 thousandths times 3, and that's going to equal decimal point. We have no chips in the tenths, 1 chip in the hundredth, and 2 chips in the thousandths. Okay, number 2, it says draw a model similar to the one pictured below for parts B, C, and D. Find the sum of the partial products to evaluate the expression. Okay, so they broke the 3 up into 3 ones, 1 tenth, 2 hundredths. And then they're going to multiply each one of those by 7, similar to our distributive property. So 7 times 3 is 12. 7 times 1 is 7. And 7 times 2 is 14 hundredths. And now what we've got to do is take those and add them all up. So if you think of this, there's a decimal point here, there's a decimal point here. We know our answer is going to have a 12 out front. 7 tenths and 1 tenth is going to give us 8 tenths. And then we have a 4 in the hundredths place. So we're going to end up with, and how many of you noticed I made a mistake? 7 times 3 is not 12. It is 21. So we need to change that to a 21. Today's mistake is brought to you by Mr. Cottrell. We all make mistakes. It's okay. Okay, next one. We have 6 times 4 and 25 hundredths. So we are going to make 3 boxes. 1, 2, 3. Out in front of the distributive property we're going to use right now, we're going to put a 6. First one is the 4, which is in the ones place. So we're going to have 4 ones, which is 6 times 4 ones. Next, we're going to have a 2 in the tenths place. So that is 6 times 2 tenths. And the last one is that 5 in the hundredths. So we're going to have 6 times 5 hundredths. Okay, if we do that, 6 times 2 tenths. So we're going to have 6 times 2 tenths. And we're going to have 6 times 5 hundredths. Six times 4 gives me 24 ones. Don't forget there's an imaginary decimal point there. 6 times 2 is 12 tenths. 12 tenths would be written as 1 decimal point 2. And 6 times 5 is 30 hundredths. 30 hundredths would be decimal point 30. If we add that up, 24 plus the 1 whole is going to give me 25. And then we're going to put a decimal point. Look at our tenths next. We have a 2 and a 3, which gives us 5. And in our hundredths, we only have a 0. So our answer is going to be 25 decimal point 50. Okay, letter C, 3 copies of 4 and 65 hundredths. So we're going to do our chart again. Since it's 3 copies, we're going to put a 3 out front. We're going to have 4 ones, 6 tenths, and 5 hundredths. First one we're going to do is 3 times 4 ones. 3 times 4 ones is going to give us 12. Do not forget that imaginary decimal point. Then we're going to do 3 times 6 tenths. 3 times 6 is 18 tenths. Remember, it looks like that. And the last one is 3 times 5 hundredths, which is going to give us 15 hundredths, which looks like this. If we add those together, we have 12 and 1 is going to give us 13. If we look at our tenths place, we have an 8 and a 1. If we add those together, it's going to give us a 9. And last, we have a 5 in the hundredths place, which is going to give us the 5, which is 13 and 95 hundredths. Letter D, 4 times as much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boxes. We're making 4 times, so 4 goes out in front. We've got 2 tens, 0 ones, 0 tenths, 7 hundredths, and 5 thousandths. First one, 4 times 2. 4 times 2 tens. Remember, 4 times 2 is 8, but if you have 8 tens, that is 80. 4 times 0 ones. Anything times 0 is 0, so we have 0 ones. Again, 4 times 0 tenths. Anything times 0 is 0. Now we're back to a 7. 4 times 7 hundredths. 7 times 4 is 28, but we need to do hundredths. And our last one is 4 times 5 thousandths. Four times 5 is 20. We need to go to the thousandths, which is 3 places. 20 thousandths would look like that. If we're going to add them together, whole numbers, I've got an 80 and a 0 ones. 80 plus nothing is going to give us 80. Decimal point. If we now look at our tenths, I've got a 2 in the tenths and a 0 in the tenths, which is going to give us 2 tenths. And if I then move over to our hundredths, I have an 8 and a 2. Uh-oh. 8 and 2 is 10. We can't put 10 here. So we need to change this 2 into a 3, and that would become a 0. Because you can only have 9 living in a place. You can't have 10. Which means your answer is going to be 80 and 30 hundredths, or 80 and 3 tenths. Number 3 is a word problem. It says Miles incorrectly gave the product of 7 times 2 and 6 tenths as 14 and 42 hundredths. Use a place value chart or an area model to help Miles understand his mistake. Okay, place value chart is doing the chips. Area model is doing the boxes. So I'm going to show you both. Okay, place value chart. So we've got 7 times 2 and 6 tenths. That means we need 7 copies of 2 and 6 tenths. So here's my decimal point. This is my ones, and this is my tenth. This is a little bit longer one because we've got 7 copies. So first we need 7 copies of 2 ones. 1 copy, 2 copies, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Got 7 copies. Next we've got our 6 tenths. We need 7 copies. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, got our copies. Now we need to make groups of 10. If we've got 6 and 4, make 10. So they become 1 dot over here. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here's another group of 10. That becomes 1 more dot. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 again. Becomes 1 dot. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Becomes another dot. Okay, now we got a group over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10. Now we got to go to our tens place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We don't have enough. So we're left with 1 in the tens, 8 in the ones, a decimal point, and 2 in the tenths. So I got 18 and 2 tenths as an answer. The other way we could have done it is to use our area model. So we would have a 7 out front. We have 2 ones. And we have 6 tenths. So that's 7 times 2 ones. And that's 7 times 6 tenths. 7 times 2 is 14. 14 ones would look like this with a decimal point behind it. 7 times 6 is 42 tenths, which would look like 4 decimal point 2. If we then added those together, 14 and 4 14 and 4 gives me 18, and I'm left with 2/10. And number 4, just to let you know, today's special guest was Mrs. Kammer at the copier. Remember for the Monday, today's special guest was Mrs. Kammer, also known as Mrs. Palumshin, at the copier. Mrs. Amir wants to buy 8 protractors and some erasers for her classroom. She has $30. If protractors cost $2.66 each, how much will Miss Zamir have left to buy erasers? So we need to do 8 times $2.65. So that means we're going to do 8. We've got a 2 in the ones, a 6 in the 10th, and a 5 in the 100th. Gives us 8 times 2 ones, which gives us 16. 8 times 6/10 is 48/10, which looks like 4.8. And 8 times 5/100. 8 times 5 is 40. 40/100 looks like this. If we add up our whole numbers, we've got 16 and 4, which gives me 20. We have 8 and 4 is 9, 10, 11 is 12, which we can't do. So we now need to make this into a 1 and a 2. So we have $21. To make it money, we need to put a 0 behind it. And she had $30. She spent $21.20 on her protractors. We need to subtract. Can't do, we need to borrow. That 3 becomes a 2, which makes this a 10. Can't do, makes this a 9, which makes this a 10. Can't do, makes this a 9, which makes this a 10. Did we have to do that? No. So we leave this a 10. 0 minus 0 is 0. 10 minus 2 is 8. 9 minus 1 is 8. 2 minus 2 is 0. $8.80 she has left to buy her erasers. Have a great night. Be good for our sub on Friday. And I hope the field trip is fun tomorrow. And I will see you back on Monday.